We are live, ladies and gentlemen, gentlemen and
Yeah.
ladies. What's up, Robert Schwenkler?
Hello.
How you doing today, my brother?
Doing good. Excited to talk about leadership
Looks
and
like
how,
you're on a little vacation out in space, man.
yeah, I took a little bit of leadership in my own life and I decided to take a journey today. I'm reporting to you from outer space,
Like a
and it
space monkey.
looks like you drove up north to the Golden Gate Bridge, huh?
Yeah, just thought I'd catch the sunset early
Yeah.
today, um, over here in Sausalito
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, brother. Well, here we are talking about leadership, talking about the essential fact that most relationship challenges, starting with not having a relationship if you really want one, boil down to a failure of leadership. How would we define leadership today, Robert? What's the simplest definition that we can share for what leadership is?
Yeah. I think the simplest way of talking about leadership is it really is a matter of just knowing what you upon it. It really boils down to that. And to expand upon that just slightly, what's happening at every moment in our life or at every moment in a relationship or every moment leading up to a relationship is that I'm either in tune with what I want, I'm in tune with my values, I'm in tune with my strengths, with my weaknesses, and I know what my integrity is. I know exactly what I'm here for in every single moment. I know what works for me. I know what doesn't work for me. And I'm expressing those verbally, sometimes non-verbally, but I'm aware of them and I'm acting upon them.
Yeah, you know what you want, and you're willing to talk about it. It's
Yeah,
like the simplest, most fundamental unit of leadership. And in this way, like leadership starts long before you get into a relationship. We're talking about life leadership, you know, being, knowing your values, knowing what you want, and having the capacity to admit to yourself where you don't, um, you're not as actualized as you want to be, right? This is a huge aspect of leadership in starting with my own life. And it really takes courage. It really takes courage to lead our lives in such a as to number one, there's like three doorways to this kind of form of leadership and growth, right? Doorway number one, I first have to admit to myself that I suck at something, that I could be better at something, that that I have room for improvement in an aspect of my life, whether that's communication or that's um, uh, my physical health and well-being, whether that's my job or whether that's my cunnilingus. I need to be able to admit where I suck at something or don't suck well enough, and to myself. The second gateway is to admit it to somebody else, to be seen as sucking at something by somebody else. And these are all acts of vulnerability, right? Starting here, sharing it. And then the third thing is having the courage to pursue improvement, to invest in getting better at that thing, right? Because and this is what it means to take leadership in my life. I know what my values are, I know what my strengths are, I know what my weaknesses are, and I am getting better in the places where I know I need to get better to live the most outrageously beautiful, fun, connected life that I can live and to be in the most beautiful relationship I can be in. But I'm curious, like, I mean, of course, all of us fail at this form of leadership in our lives. And I see men really struggling with this, a lot of men struggling with avoidance. And I'm curious what some of your thoughts are, Robert, on why men struggle so hard to be honest with ourselves about this stuff and step up and take action.
yeah, and this is something we work with. This is the essence of our work that we do at the Brotherhood community, in Authentic Dating Secrets, at the Men's Leadership Intensive. All of the work that we do with men comes down to this fundamental piece about leadership in our life. And uh, You know, there are a few main reasons that we find in our work that guys aren't able to access or express their leadership, not just in a powerful way, but also in a sensitive way. So where they're not just being bulls running through China shops, destroying everybody around them, but they're able to be aware and attuned of their impact. And one of the big reasons for that is shame. It's this shame that keeps us frozen, and that can look a couple different ways. You know, one of them is this masculine conditioning that a lot of men get in some form or another, which is uh, don't ask for support. And there's all these different phrases that kind of underlie don't ask for support. It's man up, don't be a bitch, don't be a pussy, don't cry, don't show weakness. And the implication is that if you get support from somebody else, then you're weak, you're less than, you're not a man. One of the other reasons that guys don't get support is that you is that there's just like a knowledge gap. Like a lot of guys don't really have a picture of what's on the other side of getting support. Like for me, doing this work for myself, other guys, I'm like, oh my God, guys, there's so much is possible. And I know what it was like to be me 10 years ago. And just, I had no idea. I had no vision. I had no sense of possibility, or very little sense of possibility, I should say. And just like the aliveness and the depth and the richness and the juiciness and sexiness and all of this good stuff that I get to have in my and ease also. Like I know a lot of people have like drama in their relationships. All of this stuff becomes a totally different game once we realize that it, you know, once we start taking some leadership to start working on ourselves and getting more in contact with our values and our integrity and expressing them in our relationship.
Yeah, and I want to say too, I know you hinted at this, but we have been conditioned to this armoring. You know, these phrases like "man up," "don't cry," "don't be a little bitch." Like this chips away at our sensitivity in the world, right? So it's not just that we're afraid to ask for help. It's literally that we are cut off from our own inner sensitivity to the need for help, right? Like you numb the whole system down by shaming a little boy for having feelings, right? Yeah. You numb the whole system down for shaming a little boy for his tears or needing support, right? So men are up against some serious conditioning, some trauma in our nervous systems. And that is not to be underestimated. It's to be met with a lot of care and awareness and consciousness, because it's the key to undoing our avoidant bullshit, our dissociative patterns, which is what happens when we're numbed out because we have armor, this thick armor over our nervous system in certain ways. Is that, you know, we have to start sensitizing ourselves and feeling more, right? Yeah. And that's some scary, deep inner work, but worth every moment of it, because you feel more in all directions, including love, pleasure, connection, belonging, all of it, right?
Yeah. And again, what you're speaking to connects into what's on the other side of doing this work. And there's some really good stuff. So I would love to talk about a few of the ways that not taking leadership can show up in relationship. And we can talk a little bit about what taking leadership in relationship can and oftentimes does look like. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, it bears saying that as a generalization, but one that stands up really strongly and is imperfect and not true for everybody. She wants to be led. She wants to just relax into a strong lead, into a presence that can penetrate the situation, that can at least propose a directionality for what you're doing for dinner or what's happening in the relationship or where, you know, where you're going to go. There's a leadership that she craves. And by she, I just mean the feminine, I mean women in general. And especially the women who are really strong leaders and have a strong masculine and are really empowered. There's something especially deeply nourishing to the feminine nervous system around a man who's showing up in leadership. So what can that look like in relationship? It can look like, instead of saying, do you want to go to Chinese food? To say, I'd like to eat some Chinese food tonight. How do you feel about that?
I want to break that down a little bit because this is a piece of language that I got a few years ago that is like, if this is a beautiful, beautiful takeaway, super easy way to take leadership in a situation. Here's what I want. Again, like being aware of what I want. How do you feel about that? The feeling state is a very kind of feminine state. You can get her feedback. You're not just going to be like, we're going to Chinese food and I don't care whether you want it or not. No, it's saying, here's what I want. I'm offering to take the lead. How do you feel about that? How does that land for you? And then you can receive some feedback. That sounds amazing. That doesn't sound that great.
And in certain situations, being like, we're fucking going to Chinese food and I don't give a fuck what you say, is actually the thing that's going to make her pussy drip. It's the thing that's going to like, it can be the stroke, right? But the distinction that we're talking about here about not getting stuck in the codependence of like, what do you want? Like looking for permission to want what we want, and instead just being very clear and claiming our desire is this essential movement of leadership in the relationship. I want to have a conversation about how awkward our sex was last night. When are you available for that? You know, there are so many things that you can, so many desires that you can express, that you can initiate and penetrate into the situation. And the more uncomfortable it is, the more powerful the act of leadership and the greater the potential results are and benefits are for your relationship.
And I want to say that leadership is an act of vulnerability. And simultaneously, it's an act of strength. But to bring forth our desires is kind of vulnerable. Even for us guys who I know we don't have feelings and we're taught to man up and not cry and not take it personally. It's actually vulnerable. We risk being disagreed with. We risk being ridiculed. We risk being abandoned. We risk having the woman that we're with getting triggered and shutting down, and maybe they don't want to be with us. And, you know, there's this whole parade of things that can happen internally. Oftentimes we're not even aware that they're happening, but they happen emotionally for us, and they kind of grip us and seize us and make us freeze. And we choke down our truth. And the suppression of our truth is really, when it comes down to it, the only reason that a relationship ever doesn't work or becomes painful or becomes dramatic.
Yeah, I like that distinction. Or becomes painful or dramatic. Maybe a relationship that's really, that when you're expressing your truth, a relationship may not be romantic anymore. It may not be sexual, not be like intimate partnership. It's also not going to be drama. It's not going to be conflict. It's not going to be a mess, because you're simply expressing your truth, and that's what's informing the direction of how you're choosing to engage with each other. It's again, this is such a simple thing. You know.
Yeah, and I want to you said it right there. I want to qualify that by saying both people need to be willing to show up and play that game together. Otherwise, it's, you know.
Well, it becomes pretty clear pretty quick if they're not.
Yeah.
Right. And if you have a standard of telling the truth to yourself first, then you're not going to fall for bullshit from other people. Like, this goes for everybody. You know, if you know, to the extent that you're willing to look at the uncomfortable truth and get answers from the truth that you don't want to hear, that don't agree with your preferences, then you're not going to fall for other people's bullshit. Because all the bullshit in the world preys upon the fact that you don't want to hear the truth, that you'd rather hear your preferences. So
dudes, here's what it comes down to. You can either get support, or you can avoid it and keep letting your bullshit destroy relationships sometimes before they even start. That's really what it comes down to.
You know, every dude has this fantasy of like the hottest girl in the world just walking up to him out of nowhere and being like, I saw you from across the room and I just had to come and introduce myself to you. And just like having the sort of glory and beauty and sexiness of the feminine just like come and fall right into our lap and just give herself over to us effortlessly, right? And it's never gonna fucking happen like that. It's just not. That's not how it works. It's only going to happen like that when you've cultivated so much leadership in yourself, so much of like, you can think of it as a kind of virtue. Like you've cultivated such a like a radiant sense of high frequency virtue in your own capacity for leadership and your own self-love and self-worth and self-value. Like that's the only circumstance under which that fantasy will ever take place. So, and from that moment on, if you don't take leadership, then you're going to destroy the chemistry of that relationship too. So starting from moment one in a relationship, go and penetrate the world with your desire. Express what you want without expecting the world to reciprocate, without obligating the world to a particular kind of response to your desire. And again and again and again, you're just going to find more and more magic, more and more beauty, more and more intimacy and connection in your life. Yeah. So hit it, dudes. And, tell us about your experiments in expressing your desire. And like, walk away from this video with one thing that you want to work on for yourself. Where have you not been honest with yourself about where you need some work?
For a lot of guys, that's their sex life, performance anxiety. For some guys, that's communication. For some guys, it's confidence and even approaching and talking to women, you know? So what's the one simple action?
Yeah.
To deepen their capacity to take strong leadership in their lives. So thanks for watching, guys. Great to be with you. And we will talk to you next week.
Adios, amigos.